I'm working on this like a blog site here, and I'm using the material design 3 for building this admin theme. So I just updated login screen here. And I created the in login theme. I set it up the app bar, and also set up the navigation drawer. I'm still working on it, so it's still rough. So it doesn't have all the pages done yet, but I can go through quickly a few things that I tweaked. One that I tweaked is like the dynamic colors of material design 3, where you can pick and choose dynamic color. For example, let's say I have the preset color set up here, so I can set up preset to have the theme applied. Let me show you this screen, and then I'll change the theme here. So, and also have dynamic color, like I can do a color picker and just go here and select a particular theme. And sorry. Oops. It's not selecting, but let me go here. And let's see if I go over to the orchard logo and it changes the color, and I set it up, and it picks up the color and set it up here as a theme. Yeah, so there's one thing similar to what we have, like dark mode and light mode. Um, it reflects the material colors in respect to the mode. I also work on this list page, which is kind of a responsive tool. So it has like swipe action. You can click on the action, open and edit page. It edit selection. It updates the selection similar to what we have today. Um, and this filter selection, for example, like I search on the blog, it only filters the blog part, which is like what we have today, same, but in material theme. All this list screen that we see here is a component. So if I can show you quickly. So I'm using the fast element component, which is like a component base list, where I say, you see material list here, mat list, and it's a custom component based off of the fast element, which creates a shadow root and adds the slots, different slots to it. Like I have action slot, filter slot, the item slot. Let me show you the bigger one. So yeah, if you can see on the source side, you see mat list is a component, and it creates a component and adds a slot. So like combining the user interactivity into the custom component, and splitting the JavaScript code base, moving out of the C# CSS file into a component, and focusing like CSS and shapes to purely generate the HTMLs on server side. So yeah, another thing that I worked on this is moving away from jQuery and Bootstrap, and using the BeerCSS as a CSS framework for Material 3. Also, like rewriting some of the jQuery related code that we have in Orchard core, move into like a component in the fast element component. So let's say you see this search button, that is also one of the fast component. If you see, it's a mat search, but it has exact same logic what we have today, in terms which we write on the document load. I move that code into like component connected, and splitting that separation of like reusable component into fast element, and the element is generated using C sharp. I embedded that into our resource management here. So whenever you add an element, it looks into our resource and see that whether the particular library is needed or not, and it adds into what do you call this, import map, and you see the import map is automatically built based on the component being used by C sharp CSS files. So moving away from like traditional JavaScript into like a modular script, like ES modules. Yeah, I worked on some of the screens, for example, security, users, quickly in a material form. I follow in the material design pattern, whereas like keeping the action button on the right hand side, so it's easier for mobile developer or mobile users to use on the mobile. So things like that I'm following, and changing the only view side of the screen, so nothing on the backend side. And in core Orchard core I'm making on, it's like purely the theme. So uh, configuration settings, for example, general. So like you see in tabs format similar to what we have, but in a material form here. The feature screen that I change, split into 3 different areas, like active features, inactive features, always enable features. See, if I enable the feeds, I also worked on um, the dialog boxes. So like what we have the dialog box today, converted into a fast element dialog box, which is a reusable component. Else, yeah, I think that's what I worked so far. Any questions? Any feedback on this change?
Questions. First, what problem are you trying to solve with this? Okay. Second, when you say component, what do you mean by component? Is that a component, a UI component, or is it like a Blazor component?
No, so it's a JavaScript, TypeScript based component, and by building the theme, it's just like additional theme similar to we have separate themes. So for example, let's say I can go to here, design section, themes. So yeah, bear with me, this is like old theme, but let me go back to our admin theme here. So this is an admin theme, our current theme, and this is the theme that I created called MateAdmin. So when you enable that, it just applies to the admin area of the application. So that is what I'm building. In terms of questions related to the component, like we do have dialog component, for example, right? So you see the template ID, confirm, delete dialog. This is our existing code where we build those delete dialog components, put it into the footer on every theme. I'm taking that particular piece and move it into a dialog object. So I can show you quickly how it works here. Configuration features, and then you see here an active feature. If I select, let's say, GraphQL, and this is disable, you see the mat dialog component just popped up here. If I say no, it goes away. You see this line particular. So it's a mat dialog. It's a custom component. It's a browser standard where you can extend or create a custom component using JavaScript to build an interactivity around the custom component definition that you can provide. So instead of like div and you write onloaded event and scripts, you actually say that mat dialog, and then you can define attributes and properties, and you can implement as a custom element, and browser recognize it, search engine recognize it, because it's now a standard and most of all the browsers supports it. And it's a reusable component, meaning you can reuse same component everywhere else as long as you add the component modules included. So for example, to use this component mat dialog, I have added that into my script import map. I can call it, I'm calling it as a MateAdmin core and common. So any component that defined under the common library, and when I use this one, utilizing our resource management, it just adds that import map, maintains the import map behind the scene, and that component becomes workable with the help of the library that script that it loads, which is like a module script.
Would it make sense to add support for web components in the resource management?
Sorry, say that again.
In the resource management, right now you can register scripts, you can register CSS. Should we have register web component?
Yeah, so I tweaked that. Maybe I can quickly show you here. But I call it as like in our resource, when you say add resource, you can define a name. So I can show you quickly here. What I did to solve that problem is resource management configuration option. Yeah, so this is how I'm defining, and I'm calling it as defined resource and ES module. I'm naming this as ES module, and I created another tag helper to catch that and convert it into a script.
Okay, so it's just you hacked around.
Yes.
Yeah. So it would be interesting to actually have the notion of modules. Sorry, modules. Yeah, the import. I don't know, maybe modules. Yeah, and then the same way we can say insert CSS, insert, like in the templates we say inject resource script, inject the resource CSS, the fruit, the top, we could say inject the modules, and then all the modules. I think that would be interesting also for the, and you know very well about it because you have with the implementation, the widgets, the flow parts, the back parts, because we dynamically create and inject HTML and JavaScript. When we say insert part or insert in a flow part and we insert an element, a block, then we need to inject the HTML, but the JavaScript sometimes the JavaScript needs to be executed also, and sometimes and we also need to preload all the JavaScript for all the blocks. And maybe a web component in this case would be much better. So maybe also supporting web components with the resources would be much better. This way we could just load all the web components and then instantiate a component when we insert a block. That might be a good use case, I think.
Yeah, so here, yeah, exactly similar to that, what I did here is set up the import map. So when we set the import map here, we are telling that this is the library that I want to use and this is my path. It doesn't actually load that library at that time. It just defines the map. But whenever the particular library gets loaded, so let's say if I go here.
So it's lazy loading the library if you select.
Yeah, so this library is like a ES module actually. So if you go here somewhere, it actually uses the import statement. I can find it here. So you see import fast element. I don't know, it's very tiny. I can zoom in, but yeah. So if you this statement import fast element as this, and it says from like MateAdmin/fast. So when this identifies, the browser understands that this is from where I have to pick it up, and that's defined in the import map here. So we can use ES module, we can use the import statement within the ES module, and as long as we have the import map defined here, it can recognize from where to load the file and instantiate that component.
So can you show an example, a code example of where like a small component, like from a developer perspective, what would the developer need to change to like adopt reusing those components?
Yeah, so first element, this is what I'm using here. The Microsoft Fast Element they are already using for SharePoint here, I think. They're using along with the React library, but this is independent. Yeah, you don't need to use any framework library to use, but it provides like a gap between the default implementation of standard, the web standard, and utilizing on top of it. So for example, let's say in this, say, okay, you import a fast element and define the CSS, and you say create hello world, define an attribute, and yeah, and just import that as a module file and define an element. So this is a pretty basic fast element which shows. So it has a different templates system, style system. So template is like here you see say HTML, then you say this is my property that I want to display. This is the property of the class that you defined. And that's renders, and then you have like a basic observability and other attributes like attribute and things like that, which you can take input and output of the additional attributes. So for example, let's say this dialog element, When I click on disable, so I have defined multiple elements like mode, title, body, icon, for example. And the first element has this, I have set up that attribute property to that property and also set it observable. So the moment I change this dialog disable title to something, because it's observability enabled, it's automatically updates it. You see the change? I made the change here and it just updated here because it's observing that attribute. Let's see if I remove the icon, for example, you see the icon will be removed from the button. Something like that. Yeah.
Do we need to use more web components in the admin?
I think so, yeah, because I feel like this is what the orchard is missing, the interactivity. There are a lot of things that we can do client side, which we could use to improve the interactivity and user interactions. In terms of using an application administration side of the work, yeah, the placement and shapes all good. On a front end side where you have flexibility to manage the site, but as far as we are delivering an experience on admin side, which like we are not changing much, um, but we focus on more on providing the experience. Probably the web component makes more sense because then we can provide a more richer experience there.
But the people from the Svelte team, they hate web components. Why should we love them?
Who hates what web component?
Rich or Rick, the guy who invented Svelte. You know Svelte kit, right?
No.
What? What? The best thing ever. Svelte. Svelte.js. Svelte kit. That's his name.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
You should look at it. It's beautiful. It's now it's getting old now. It's not super new. It's like 5 years old at least, 6, 7, and it's like Vue.js, Angular, all these things, right? And React, but it's amazing how it works and it's beautiful. And Rick or Rich Harris, I think, and he's family discussing with the one who invented, created 11T, the static site generator, who is a proponent for web components, but Rich Harris is an opponent of web components. He tried it and there are so many issues, he said. So they are fighting on Twitter about fighting nicely, like they are talking, arguing about why or why not use web components. I have no idea because I don't know how this works. But I'm wondering if it's technology of the future or not, because I mean, I'm wondering what their arguments
are. Interesting.
Look into Svelte. Svelte it's awesome how it works. Okay. Yeah, so I like if you could, it would be interesting to formalize that as a discussion to see if we should use more web components, and if so, then what could be converted into web components such that the admin experience would be much easier to change, to tweak, to maintain, if there are parts of the system that we should already move as web components. If we support web components, is it like resource management at least first?
Yeah, I think just one thing about components. I mean, the only benefit that I see from adding components is that the reusability, right? So if someone wants to change the admin theme, it will be much simpler than today.
Yeah.
Meaning go and change the components and then you should be able to just change the whole site. So I think if we use component, we would have to use component for everything to make it easy.
Question being also, how does theming work with web components? Can you theme a web component? There is this part. And then there is the part about, now we have a web component that is themable. Can we use can we create some components in the admin that can be reusable across the admin? Like lists, like search boxes, like all these things that we can reuse. Because I think that's a goal also of a web component, to reuse it across pages as a configurable thing, instead of rewriting in every page the same kind of thing. Like today,
Yeah, I think that's the main idea behind components, and that's what I'm saying.
The content type selector today is a view component. So it'd be a web component instead to provide, I don't know.
Yeah, so in components, based on my this small exercise here, what I think and what I learned is that this mat list item, for example, is a component. You built-in provide the anatomy of the component. So, for example, how the internal of that component. So, if you look at this shadow root here, anything within the shadow root is baked into the component, but anything that is outside this outside the shadow root, what you see this like this div, this title or the now element, those are the feed into the component as a slot. So that is something that you still can make and change, but you cannot change anything inside the anatomy. So let's say in this component you say, okay, I want to show a list here somewhere, and I want to show a swipe action here, which always be on the right hand side. Probably you cannot change that, but you can decide what fit into that particular slot. And you say, okay, if I do not provide it, then I would not keep the space for it. So for example, let's say if I remove this slot here, for example, and I don't feed in, it goes away, and it takes the other component takes the full width. So yeah, you can provide that, but you cannot change in what goes inside the component.
And then there's some work for each component to decide what's the scope of the component, what do we want users to be able to change, what is what the component.
Yes. Okay. So the anatomy stays like unchanged. So we can drill down to what are the areas that we cannot give as a changeable thing. But you can provide the styles to the component. So here, if you see, I don't know if I have an example here, but I can define the style of the component. So let's say if the mat list component has header, then I want to be displayed as a background in different color here, for example. So yeah, you can define the component parts outside of the component. So we can provide the way to style those differently.
Cool. Nice demo.
Thank you.